This is what we've been waiting for about 3 days. I'm making my Cornetti, our house favorite, house special Cornetti. This is the dough. This is the dough that I just brought out from the fridge. It's cold, so it has to be cold. One of the secrets of making laminated dough, croissant dough or cornetti, I'm making actually an Italian style chocolate cornetti. I may make some standard ones as well, but the secret is the temperature of the dough and also the rest time. I'm using only 2 grams of yeast, 1,000 grams of dough, of flour. So 1 kilogram of flour, 2 grams of fresh yeast. I'm going to have about 500 grams of butter, French butter, unsalted butter, just right out of the fridge. The butter and the dough both have to be the same temperature, cold. I'm going to use some baking paper in order to make a block of butter, butter block. Okay, I have my rolling pin here, my sifter, and some extra flour so that it doesn't stick. That's all I'm going to need. Now, a little bit more about the dough. This dough, I made it in an indirect method. I first used about 1/3 of the dough that I fermented in a cold area, the coldest area of the house, and not to exceed 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit, preferably somewhere around 18 degrees or 64 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius. If not, then it has to be controlled temperature, stable temperature, or the fridge. Just going to flour my surface just a little bit. Okay, just going to flour it, and I'm going to let the dough out of my container. This dough is actually very wet. It's very soft dough. I'm trying to increase my liquid content ratio to flour every time I make my cornetti because they come out better and better every time, I notice. So this is the consistency, guys. This is the consistency of my dough. Look at that. Okay? It's bubbly. The aroma is amazing. Now what I'm going to do is going to flour my rolling pin as well. And we're going to start rolling out this flour dough. But before we do that, while this is cold, and you have to work quickly here. You don't want the butter to melt. And you don't want the dough to come down to room temperature either. So I'm going to flour the baking paper that I have. Okay? Watch this. So we're going to put some flour. Okay, right here. Our baking paper. Okay, perfect. Okay, we're going to connect it together. And now, we're going to get a second sheet of baking paper. That's it. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make that famous, the butter block. Work on the butter while it's cold. Now we're going to form this butter block so that it's going to occupy about half of the dough that we've made. Now the thickness has to be about the same thickness as one layer of dough. That's another consideration. So temperature, thickness, proportion, and then dimensions. The dimensions are important. You want to leave some space you want to leave some space on the outside of the butter on the dough. You don't want to cover the entire dough with butter completely. You want to leave some space around the edges. So I've cut off just a little piece here. I'm going to put it to fill up the edges. I'm noticing that it's already becoming malleable. It's already softening up. So I need to work quickly now. I need to really increase my speed, but it's still quite, see, it stands up. It doesn't really bend yet. So that occupies about half of it. But it's much thinner than this. So what we need to do is we need to let this rest and now start working on the dough. Okay? There's our dough. So I'm going to flatten it out. So there you go. This now occupies a lot less than a half, and it's about the same thickness. So what that means is we need to flatten the butter out, and then we're going to just fold it over. And this time we need to roll it out. Making sure it's not too thin. That's pretty good thickness. You just roll it out into a rectangle as much as you can. Also, the other thing you can do is you can fold over the edges of the baking paper. It's going to be a perfect rectangle, or as close as possible to it. But we have ourselves a nice rectangle here that I'm happy with. There you go. So that's our block of butter. Now, we work fast, and we're going to transfer this, guys. Don't need this. We're going to transfer this. First, we're going to move this onto our flour surface, like so. And just going to put it right in the middle, right down the middle. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover half of it with the top and the other half from the bottom. Connect it in the middle. Okay. So I'm going to now flatten this together, but gently, making sure not to flatten the butter too much in proportion to the dough. Because the dough is still a little bit thicker, but you want those layers of flour, butter to form. And therefore, you want to do it in stages. You want to flatten in stages at the right temperature. Your home should be cold. Temperature at home should not be too warm, because that helps in the process for the layers to form. You don't want that butter to melt too quickly. So I'm going to do my best now. I'm not going to roll it too thin. Okay? And that's it. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm going to use now the whole length of this wooden board instead. You turn it around. fold it from the bottom, like so. And we're going to cover it up and put it in the fridge. Probably 20 minutes. You don't need to do it probably 30 minutes this first time. About 30 minutes or so, we're going to start to really flatten it more to about 1 centimeter, 3/8 of an inch. And then we're going to fold it over just like that, remembering where the seam is. So kind of leaving it like a book, so that the book is facing to the right. You were to open the book from the same side. If you want to do it from the left, just remember how you leave it every time. And then we're just going to flatten it from bottom to top, fold it over, and then we're going to make 4 turns, 4 times, 90 degrees. Okay, I just brought it out of the fridge. I'm going to flatten this, our beautiful croissant dough, Cornetti. As I said, I'm making Cornetti, Italian style recipe, because it calls for a little bit more sugar, also some lemon zest. Gives it a different kind of flavor that I really like. So, I'm going to flatten this out again. Now, after you bring it out of the fridge, I actually let it rest. Room temperature for about 5-10 minutes. About 5 minutes is enough. You don't want it to be too long, because then you can melt the butter. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to flatten this. Almost there. In fact, I'm running out of space. Because I'm running out of space, I'm going to use my kitchen as a cold surface now. Okay? Make sure it doesn't stick. And now all I'm going to do is fold this like so, and then the top as well. Top over it, and there we have it. Perfect. So notice the book opens from the right, and that's going to be easy for me to remember. Alright, I'm going to cover it up in plastic, and we're going to do this 4 times. We're going to do the same thing 4 times, always opening from this side, flattening it out thinly. We're going to put it in the fridge with about 40-minute intervals. So about 40 minutes at least. The last interval, you want it to be a little longer, about an hour. So this one is going to go into the fridge right now. So what you can do is remembering where you are, this being on the right, you can turn it on the other side, on its other side. Start to flatten it from its other side as well. Now I'm going to turn it on its other side one more time. What helps with this process is the appropriate amount of time in the fridge for this dough. This dough actually does need those 3 days, because the flour and the butter actually harden enough in the fridge so that they don't break the layers, and the butter doesn't soften too much. So that's very key. Time is an ingredient, guys. Time is, you can think about it as not just a variable, but a key ingredient in this recipe, as in all recipes. So watch this thickness. It's not too thick, it's perfect. It's less than about 1 centimeter. It's not sticking, butter's not coming out. But now I need to close it. Again, going to do the same thing. There you go. Perfect. Gonna fold it over and very quickly put it into our fridge. Form a rectangle. So the book has a completely rectangular shape. And now work very quickly to put it to cover it up in plastic. So this is my second turn. Decided to show you a second turn anyway. And then the next two turns I won't show. So I'll see you when I'm going to actually start forming the cornetti. Alright, I've made my 4 turns. I brought the dough out from the fridge. And now I'm going to flatten it and form our cornetti. Watch where it is. The book opens from the right. So I'm going to put it in this direction. Always consistently. I floured my surface already. Okay. And now, after the 4th turn, 4th lamination, 4th layer, I actually let it rest in there for about an hour, even an hour and a half. But still, look at how elastic it is, the dough. Why? Well, because it had enough time to rest in the fridge, to ferment and mature. Also, why? Because I used more water than I usually do. I used more milk than I usually do, about 70%. 69% in this recipe, to be exact. Okay, so I have my sheet, my pastry dough sheet, ready. Now, this is about 100 centimeters by 50 centimeters. So you need to measure, you need to have some consistency if you want to make the cornetti look. What I'm going to do is I'm going to divide it in about a half. Okay, that's the halfway point. You can probably stretch it out a little bit more. The width is probably going to be about 10 centimeters. You want it to be about 10 centimeters. 10 to 12. So that's 10 centimeters right here. So I'm going to mark the width right here. Okay. Now, I'm going to make, on the bottom ones, I'm going to make cornetti. The top ones, I'm going to actually make the chocolate cornetti. Put it right here. Okay. So let's work on this one. There's 2 different ways to do it. You want to make sure that the width right here at the very end is going to be a little bit thinner. So you want to flatten that out. You can use a rolling pin if you like. I can do that. Okay. Now, watch guys. You're going to stretch it out. It's elastic dough. It's elastic dough. What you're going to do is just going to stretch that out and then just form one right here. So we're going to let these cornetti, I'm going to let them ferment and rise for another 2 hours. I want to show you how see, I flattened this one a little bit more. And then you want to make sure it's one, you kind of stretch it as you roll. Stretch as you roll, and there you have it. Okay. Gonna put our chocolates like so. This one we're gonna make it bigger. All right. There we go. So second strand. And that's our chocolate. There you go. There's another one. Actually, we're going to connect these. I'm going to make them, I decided I'm going to make them bigger. Alright, so watch. They're going to stick out a little bit. It's going to give it a better, more appetizing kind of look when they stick out. Okay, so I'm going to go like that. This way you'll be able to see both chocolates in there. Perfect. One and then two. We've rested our cornetti for about 2.5 hours. Look how they've grown. Beautiful. And now watch. Watch, they're like air. They're just like air, guys. Like so. Here are my cornetti. I'm going to mix. I have 1 egg. I'm going to mix in just a little bit of milk. I'm going to brush just the surface of every cornetto. Alright. I made 27 cornetti with this 1 kilogram of flour. I froze some. I put some in the fridge for tomorrow, and I froze the rest. I preheated the oven to the maximum temperature for about an hour. Okay, so it's highest temperature, maximum temperature. I'm going to place our cornetti. Now, we're going to cook them for 5 minutes at about 400 degrees or about 200 Celsius. Then I'm going to decrease it from 200 Celsius or 400 Fahrenheit to 350 Fahrenheit or 180 Celsius. And I'm going to cook it the rest of the time for about 10 minutes. All in all, it should take about 15 minutes. I have the fan turned on, so I have the convection of it here. Alright guys, I think it's ready. Let's look at it. Oh, I think it's ready, guys. Let's look. Yes, it's done very well in about 15 minutes. What do we do now? We're going to place them on the grill now. And what you can do is, once you cook them, you can actually freeze them. We're going to freeze 4 of them and just reheat them for breakfast. They're going to be just as good as today. Okay guys, I just cut this down just a minute ago. Just watch this. Watch all the layers. Can you count how many layers there are? This is what we've been waiting for about 3 days. Look at that, guys. Should we cut another one? This is my new recipe, guys. I used more liquid than I've ever used. About 70% milk and water compared to look at that, guys. Look at that. Just look at that. Look at that. Look at how light that is. No margarine, just best quality butter, best quality chocolate, best quality flour. A lot of love. Cemogemo. Notice it's not too flaky. It has a little more sugar than the French classic croissant style. It has lemon. Look at that, guys. Look at this. Guys, watch. Ooh, like an accordion. Accordion is one of my favorite, if not my favorite instrument. And a home-baked cornetto is also one of my favorite breakfasts. Guys, follow Cemogemo.